Hey guys, this is Michael. Just want to give you a real quick tutorial today. It's pretty nice out. The Android, you have multiple people in your phone. Now, first off, you're probably thinking, oh my God, there's people accessing my information. Actually, no. What I mean by multiple people in your phone is multiple users. And the users are actually your applications. So in other words, it works a lot like a server. If you log in at work, you have your own login, right? You log in at school, you have your own login, you have your username and password. Well, what happens is Android actually gives you privileges. In other words, gives your application, which is the user, a privilege. And that might be a little hard to think about at the very beginning. Let me talk a little bit more about this. Android is based on Linux, real quick, which is an open source code. Companies love it. Why? Because it's modifiable, meaning you can change it without asking. There's a whole bunch of people that modify it at the same time. There's a whole bunch of people that modify it that the companies don't have to pay, so they even love it a lot more. And a lot of these people are just people that have hobbies and sit at home and do this stuff, which you can teach yourself most of this stuff. Modifiable, there's no royalties to the company. In other words, you don't have to pay them to use it to modify it. You just do it. There's a lot of built-in services that come with it. And portability, Java is your main language that you're going to be using, even though this is built on the Linux kernel. And Linux was designed, I think, in 1991 by a guy that created this kernel that became open source. And the portability means that Java is executed by Android's Dalvik virtual machine. A virtual machine is basically an instance of a computer. So let's say you have a computer and you have 5 monitors. Well, on each monitor, you have a login screen. Well, that's a virtual machine, meaning really you're using that one computer for all 5 monitors and 5 keyboards and 5 mouses. But what happens is your computer is actually serving you a different graphic user interface or screen, and you're using the resources based on your username. Well, why is Dalvik from Iceland? Well, Dalvik was developed by a guy at Google. I believe his name was Bernstein, and he was from a fishing village. Actually, he wasn't. I think it was his ancestors were from a fishing village in Iceland, so that's why they call it Dalvik. I want to have a little image here I want to show you. Here's the Linux kernel running at the bottom. This is what happens. Flash memory driver. Linux can run in anything. It can run in a high-tech wristwatch if you want it to. There's audio drivers, there's Wi-Fi driver, there's camera driver, then you have your libraries. This is what is being accessed by your applications and your application framework. SQLite, where you're saving stuff, WebKit, which is what I believe Mozilla Firefox uses in Chrome currently for HTML and showing those in their web browsers, SSL, FreeType, Media Framework, Device Manager, OpenGL for graphics, and then you have your Android runtime, which are your core libraries and your Dalvik virtual machine. Then your application framework runs on all of this. Activity Manager, Window Manager, Content Providers, View System, Location Manager, Resource Manager, Telephony Manager. Then your applications are up here. Home, Contacts, Phone, Browser. And you're going to be working mostly up in this area because you're going to be using the Java. Now you can invoke SSH command for Linux OS to actually cause Linux to interact with your program a little bit more and give you a few more options. Now Android, you have multiple people in your phone. I put that at the beginning. What this means is each application, oops, got my kitty cat. Each application is a user, meaning it has its own Linux unique ID. Remember when I told you about these virtual machines? You have your own login. Well, what happens is each of these applications has their own login, but they actually don't know their ID or their password. But the system does. It's not actually known to the app, which makes Android pretty awesome because Android is what actually manages everything that your applications are doing and the lifestyle. Cycle, sorry. And that means every app runs independently from the other. So I'll give you a little description. Let's say you need water. You're thirsty. You are a person inside of the machine. You're an application. You need some water. I need some water. I asked my Mac. I'm like, hey, do you guys remember when I was telling you about allocating space and stuff? Well, that's the same thing. You're saying, hey, iMac, I need some space. Hey, faucet, I need some water. And it says, well, this is all the water you need for that application. Okay, I guess that's what I'm going to get. So that's what I'm going to use my program. And that's what I'm going to drink, just like this little kitty cat. I just thought that was cool. It's a principle, it's called the principle of least privilege, meaning your app only gets what it needs, which is pretty awesome. An application can request permission to create device data such as user contacts, SMS messages, the mountable storage, SD card, camera, Bluetooth, and more. All of this has to be done by the user, the application, at install time. Meaning, in other words, can I use this? Yeah, you can. So you need to specify that in your code when you're writing it. This right here, I'll get into talking about that, how you're instituting that with Java and communicating with that. The app lifecycle is a little different. Alive. They say your app is always alive, but sometimes it's dead. But it's interesting because if you've ever heard of a stack, you got a stack of papers, right? So in other words, on one paper, you got one thing. On the next paper, you got another one, but you're only looking at one sheet at a time. So as you move the first sheet off, you're looking at the second sheet. Well, the first sheet still exists. So let's say you want to go back to the first sheet, so you stick the first sheet back on top of the top one. That's exactly what happens here, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. On create is basically when you're setting up the application right away. Okay, on start is when the application is starting. On restore instance, this is a good place. On start actually initializes more your activity. Your activity is also a view controller. If you remember to the iPhone tutorials, if you've never known a view controller, it's actually what you're seeing on the screen. That is also where you do your activities. On restore is a good place to put your music, stuff that you want to show them a little graphic. Oh, I'm restoring. On resume. And then right here, on save instant state. This is something that's going to be used again because a lot of times your application never actually makes it to the on stop function or on stop method. It actually just gets paused because you're moving through this paper stack and moving to another one, so it only got paused and pulls up another one. Okay? And then what do you need? I'm going to talk to you about this real quick. You need the Java Development Kit. If you don't have that, JDK, you need to download that either for Windows or for Mac. You just need the standard edition. On Mac, if you go ahead and this is the second program that you'll need, Eclipse. You can use any IDE you want, Integrated Development Environment. That's basically the program that you're using to make all of the Java and organize your files. What's nice is Eclipse makes a good skeleton of what it is that you want. I believe Eclipse is also open source, so it's updated all the time. Java, if you don't have, if you're looking for the download for your Mac, actually if you download Eclipse and then go to install it, your Mac will say, oh, hey, I need Java, and then it'll find it itself because it's a lot of times real difficult to find it. Then you're going to need your ADK, I say that, Android Development Kit that you can get from Google. And in the next tutorial, I'll talk with you guys a little bit about how to install this. If you go in on your Mac and do your Eclipse, this will install your Java. Then you open your Eclipse up, and then you're going to have to install your ADK, your Android Development Kit. We can talk about that a little bit more later. And I think I've talked basically about everything I wanted to. We're going to talk about using resources too in the next couple tutorials because this has a resource compiler, meaning that it sort of packs all of your resources that you have, but what it does is it generates its own class, and we'll talk about generating classes, and it contains identifiers that you use to reference those resources in your program, and this is where we'll talk about little different standard Java resources and then how that interacts with your XML, which is what you're going to be using to format your graphic user interface. Alright guys, join me for the next tutorial. I hope this helps. The guy that asked me to talk a little bit about the difference, I didn't really talk about that many differences. It's just a different programming language that you're going to use in a different software development kit. I hope this gives you a good explanation though of how it's done. The security in this is sort of awesome because if everyone's in their own sandbox playing, then I don't have to really worry about them wanting my sandbox, so I just, have my own sand. Alright, I'll see you guys. Have a good night. Bye-bye.